What's up, guys? I'm Melanie Morrison, personal trainer. What's up, guys? I'm Melanie Morrison, I'm personal trainer and nutritionist, and today I thought I'd make a video on fitness cues. So these are foundational cues that really help set the tone to prevent injuries, compensations, and just making sure you're doing it properly. And essentially, if you're doing it properly, that's going to create less work in the long run. So let's get started. So let's get into the first one, and that is lifting your sternum, and your sternum being just below your clavicle bone. You want to lift that up towards the ceiling, which really pulls your shoulders back and down into place, really opens up your chest, and allows the mobility that your thoracic spine needs during the movement. Another cues that people typically use are just pulling your shoulders back, which does get your shoulders back, but doesn't necessarily give you the core function that you need for so many exercises. So if I'm just pulling my shoulders right back, that really limits the core function engagement that can go on here. Whereas if I'm up nice and tall and lifting my sternum up towards the ceiling, that allows my core to be active all the way through. So just to demonstrate that, I will show you with the bent over row with a kettlebell. So if I'm bending forward and I'm opening up my sternum here, lifting my sternum up toward the ceiling, and I'm going to pull in, that really allows me to activate my lats as I pull the kettlebell into my side. This is also used with squats as well. So if I'm lifting my sternum up nice and tall and I squat down, that allows that core mobility all the way through. So just to give another example, if I'm doing something just as simple as band and tears with just a strength band, I'm going to extend my arms out straight, lift my sternum high, my shoulders are in place, my core is active, I'm pulling apart. That instantly makes my rhomboids and my shoulder blades really active. Whereas if I'm just pulling my shoulders back, that limits my core function and spinal mobility. And I'm not really engaging the proper muscles because I'm using my traps way more than I need to. So let's get to the next one, and that is pulling with your elbows and not just with your wrist. And what I mean by this is allowing your elbows to guide the direction and not just using all the strength from your wrist. Quite often what we see is people grab on to do a lat pull down bar, they'll grab onto the bar and they'll use all the strength from their wrist and kind of curl their wrist and try to come all the way down in towards their chest, rather than just holding the bar and letting those elbows guide the direction, keeping the wrist straight and really using the strength all the way through your arm into your lats. And also, did you like my imaginary lat machine? Because that's how we do things in Ontario without any gyms. Thanks, Doug. So just to demonstrate that, I'll show that with a bench over row. So if you have a kettlebell or a dumbbell handy and you're bent over into your row, and I'm going to try to pull with my elbow in towards my hip rather than curling my wrist in. That's going to create a lot of tension in through my forearm, and rather than using those muscles all the way through my arm into my back, allow me to work the muscles that I'm tending to use. So moving on, we're going to get into the next one that really helps to activate your glutes in your core for many different leg exercises. So essentially you're starting that foundation from the floor and working its way up. And what I like to call it is spreading the floor, because essentially what you're doing is you're grounding your feet into the floor and trying to spread them apart from each other. So let's take it down the floor and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So with this cue, you really want to think about placing your feet on the floor and grounding them, pressing your big toe in and keeping your heels firmly planted on the floor. So with that being said, you're going to come down into your squat, keeping your big toe pressed into the floor, and you're going to spread your feet away from each other as you come up. And what that does is really activates the glutes and keeps the core active as well. So you really notice a significant difference rather than just coming down and up, because you're going to have less core activation, less glute activation. And quite often what happens in this movement, if you're not spreading the floor, is your knee can internally rotate. And if you're someone who is flat-footed or doesn't have strong feet, that's very common for that knee to kind of turn in there, which really eliminates that core activity and the glute activity. And on top of that, if you have that internal rotation, that's going to transcend into your knees and your hips, creating a lot of other issues. So super important in these squats to really spread the floor, pressing down, keeping that core tight. You squatting? How many squats can you do? Next one on the list is glute engagement, and glute engagement is essential for so many exercises and probably every lower body exercise. So it's essential to have this cue down packed to help develop your glutes properly and help with that core activation. And the glutes and the core are cousins, so they do help each other to activate. So essentially, if your glute activation is on point, that will really help to engage your core as well. So with glute engagement, the thing you do want to think about is squeezing your cheeks together. Quite often what I see in the gym is people just thrust their hips forward and push their hips forward rather than clenching their glutes to activate the glutes. So for example, if you're doing deadlifts, as you come up, my glutes are going to squeeze here rather than pushing my hips forward. The same thing goes for squats, lunges, whatever the case is. Just activating those glutes as you are at the top of the position. So just to demonstrate that with a deadlift, I have a kettlebell here. So I'm going to go into a deadlift, pulling my hips right back. And then as I'm coming up from my deadlift, I'm going to squeeze those glutes really tight, and that's going to activate those glutes and activate the core. And if I'm not squeezing those glutes, quite often you'll see people just thrusting their hips forward rather than just squeezing the muscle that we're working. So just to show the difference, squeezing the glutes, I'm still all stable and strong through here, rather than hips forward. So moving on to the next one, and that is bracing your core. So what I like to cue a lot of clients with is thinking about your lower ribs and the top of your hips being a spindle, and they're trying to interlock or intertwine towards each other as you do a core activation exercise. So what I mean by this is your ribs are going to kind of lower down, your pelvis is going to pull up into that pelvic tilt, and that's really going to lock in your core through here. And as you'll notice, my glutes will start to activate as well, because they do work together. So just neutral here into my spine, and then I'm going to crunch in through, activating my entire core, pulling the hips up, ribs down, squeezing my glutes. And this cue is so important for so many exercises, whether it's upper body or lower body. Really sets the foundation from the center of your body, preventing a lot of injuries. And also working towards that six-pack. Don't mind if I do. You don't want a six-pack? So next what we're going to do is just a way to set up from a lunge position. So I'm starting from the floor, starting from the ground up, and essentially what I'm going to do is have my ankle underneath my knee and my knee underneath my hip. So both legs are at 90 degrees, and if I'm going to curl my toes behind me and come up, I'm already in a perfect lunge position. So with this cue, I also want to say that my feet are hip width apart. So let's try our lunge. You're kind of cheating here though. Are you a cheater?
No cheater.
No cheater.
Here.
And so that's just a simple hint that you can kind of use to help set you up for that movement. So now we're going to head out to the gym and put those cues to good use. So there you have it. I hope you found those cues helpful in developing proper muscle memory and form. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at Hungry Hungry Elephant on Instagram or melanie.morrisonpt@gmail.com. Do you have any questions? What's your question?
Nothing.
You have a question?
Nothing.
What's your question? Please feel free to leave a comment below, like and subscribe if you want more content. And again, my name is Melanie Morrison. Who's this? This is Quinn.
It's out.
Hmm?
It's out.